That'll Be the Day was Buddy Holly's first big hit. It opened the door to the big time and is one of the records that helped define the sound of rock and roll. But did you know that Buddy had to violate his contract with Decca Records and resort to subterfuge to get that record out so the world could hear it? I'm JP McDermott for West Coast Ramble, and this is the true tale of Buddy Holly's That'll Be the Day. If you like what you hear, be sure to like and subscribe. Buddy Holly booked his second recording session for Decca Records on July 22, 1956, at Owen Bradley's famous Quonset Hut studio on what would eventually become Music Row in Nashville. Buddy's first session back in January had produced a single, Blue Days, Black Nights, with Love Me on the flip side. The record got decent reviews but didn't sell well. Buddy and his best friend and drummer, J.I. Allison, were anxious to get to Nashville and record a song they'd written about a month earlier called That'll Be the Day. The friends had been to see a John Wayne movie called The Searchers. Wayne's catchphrase in the movie, uttered whenever he disagreed with another character, was,
"That'll be the day."
The guys immediately picked up on the phrase the way the guys do. A day or two later, when Buddy was at J.I.'s house rehearsing, he suggested that the two of them try and write a song. J.I. responded, "That'll be the day." Buddy shot back, "Yeah, that sounds like a good idea." The song fell into place in about 30 minutes with Buddy and J.I. swapping lines. They were excited with the results. The band at that July session was made up of Buddy and J.I., accompanied by two other Texas boys, Sonny Curtis on guitar and Don Guess on bass. But the session almost didn't happen because when they got to Nashville, Don Guess didn't have a bass. He'd been renting one from Lubbock High School, and since school was not in session, he'd had to return it. Producer Owen Bradley gave them 20 minutes to find a bass or the session would be canceled. Thinking quickly, they ran over to WSM, home of the Grand Ole Opry, and borrowed a bass from legendary country session player Lightning Chance. Bass in hand, the band knocked out 5 songs in 3 hours. Girl on My Mind, Rock Around with Ollie V, Ting-a-Ling, I'm Changing All Those Changes, and That'll Be the Day. These days, we think of some of these cuts as rockabilly classics, but Decca didn't feel that way at the time. Producer Owen Bradley called That'll Be the Day the worst song he had ever heard, and opted not to release any of the cuts. Paul Cohen, Decca's head of artists and repertoire, told Buddy he didn't have the voice to be a singer, and he should give up his dreams of a career in music. He reportedly called Buddy the biggest no talent I have ever worked with. Buddy would eventually have one more session in Nashville that December, and would have another single released, but without the support of management, he knew he was going nowhere with Decca. If we were talking about anybody other than Buddy Holly, that might have been the end of the story. These songs would have come out on an obscure compilation in the 1970s, and we would have all thought they were cool and moved on. But we are talking about Buddy, and so this was not the end of the story. Be sure and check out part 2 to see what happened next.